Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com, and as you can see here, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, I'm having a lot of fun with all three assignments. My column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat, and it's about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. And someone who does relate to the Jewish community is our guest today. He's a freshman town supervisor, so we got him young.
Yes, you did.
Peter Barber, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you very much.
And you are the Guilderland town supervisor, so that's was for a long time a Republican stronghold.
Well, it depends on what long time might be. Actually,
20 years ago.
Well, my predecessor for 16 years was a Democratic supervisor.
Right.
So I hope we're getting a good trend going now. For 17 years now, there's been a Democratic supervisor.
Right.
But you are correct. Prior to that, there's at least 100 years of basically complete Republican control, with a couple of exceptions here and there.
And you know, you followed the trend. I mean, Guilderland fell first for the Republicans, and then Bethlehem fell, and then Colony fell, but Colony's sort of coming back a little.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Look, I ask you to think that we have one Republican member on the town board. You know, he's certainly very well qualified, very well versed. I mean, we work well, very bipartisan group. I mean, it's you know, so far it's going well. You know, it's 7 months into the job, but I'm already feeling...
You're not ready to leave, are you?
Well, you know, it's only a 2-year term, so I keep on telling people, I said, geez, I'm almost halfway through.
So you live in the Fort Hunter section of Guilderland?
Yeah, I live actually very close to Town Hall, so you know where Town Hall is, I can walk to work.
Right, but that's the Fort Hunter section?
Fort Hunter, some people call it McCormick's Corner, but it's close enough.
Yeah, close enough for government work, okay.
Right.
So what have been the issues that you've had to tackle
well, I think
in the past 7 months?
Most issues, and I did see your prior interviewee, so I mean, not exactly the same as the city of Albany, but the town of Guilderland, there's always financial issues. It's probably the most important forefront, but it also can't be what bogs you down either, you know, because the bottom line is, and I don't want to say we're have any financial distress, certainly we don't. I mean, to a large extent, the town has been very well run for 16 years. We have not had any of the, I'll just call them hiccups, that maybe like the town of Colony has had. We've been very prudent, very careful, but at the same time, we've been expanding our programs, expanding our parks, open space, you know, providing services.
What's the town budget?
Right now, well, it has various parts to it, you know.
But give us a round number.
I would say in about a $4 million range, but the highway gets added on top of that, water gets on top of that. So,
but the whole town budget is how much?
About $10 million. $10
million.
Yeah, I'm talking about parts when the budget in terms of what you can do as a town supervisor. Some things you can't deal with.
Your whole budget doesn't even equal the deficit that Albany has.
Believe me, I sat there on the, and I was listening to some of the conversation. But you know, it's also you know, the town basically has roughly 35,000 people. It's growing at a moderate clip.
Snail's pace.
No, actually, it's growing at a good clip. What we're trying to do, and I think one of the issues that we're trying to address, and we did adopt a comprehensive plan not too long ago, is to a lot of people have lived in their homes in suburbia now for their entire lives, and they would like to continue to live there, but they don't want to maintain, you know, the single-family home with large lawns and whatnot. So we're trying to, you know, vary our stock of housing, whether it be apartments, you know, townhouses, but also more importantly is trying to gear more towards the senior citizen needs. You know, we do have a number of people who want to come to town and build very nice and also very expensive places to live in, and we're trying to do through our zoning is to encourage, you know, more moderately priced, you know, housing. You know, you can look at Guilderland, you can look at Bethlehem. When I moved back to the area after living in Washington, D.C. for a while, we looked in Bethlehem, and back then everything was $20,000 to $30,000 or more, as much as $40,000 per house
than
Guilderland. So it's
and on Route 155, you have a senior citizen home, a senior citizen complex.
There are on 155, yes, and there's also another one that's planned. You might be thinking about that. North of 155 opposite the post office.
No,
Going south.
I'm thinking going towards Voorheesville. There's a.
You're probably thinking Mill Hill. Then, yeah, could be. I don't call it senior citizen necessarily because.
How old are you?
Well, I'm 55.
Well, there you go. I'm 55 also.
Yeah, so and I think the age requirement is 55 or above. So, so I guess I have a slightly different view of things as you get older.
A lot of times I've always heard that senior citizens housing is good for a city because what's one of the biggest problems, it's not a problem, but budget busters is schools.
Mm-hmm.
So if obviously someone's 55 and older, senior citizens apartment, it's almost like you get the real estate taxes, but you don't ever have to pay for the student in the school. So in a way, you gain that way.
Oh, exactly. I mean, there's no doubt about it, but also too, what we want to do is if you're going to invite seniors and encourage seniors to live there, you want to make sure you have the programs to go with it. So we're about ready to open a new senior center, in our town, about 2 weeks off from now, which is going to be dedicated space. We're also, doing things that you would expect to do, which is providing transportation to doctors' offices and appointments of that nature, but also taking advantage of the fact we have a YMCA in our town. We have a library. We just really want to do is, start thinking more about, as we come out of this financial difficulty that everybody was facing, and you do have a little bit more flexibility, where do you best, apply taxpayer dollars?
And what's the name of the senior complex you're talking about?
That's just the Town of Guilderland Senior Center.
Senior Center, is that an activity center?
Yeah, it's going to be basically a space where people come. There's meals that are served. There's also activities, programs, health-related programs. We're going to be inviting YMCA people to come and help.
How much is this?
No charge.
No, how much is it to build it?
Oh, it's the beauty. Basically, developers want to come to your town. A developer who wanted to build I'll call it a senior aged apartment complex. As part of the process, he agreed to build a senior center for the town.
So who was the builder?
Right now, it's Buck Construction.
B-U-C-K?
Yep, Buck Construction.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where, and how much was it for them to build this?
I don't really know. All I know, it looks very nice and has been very nice. It's been
and
inspected.
It took no town funds to.
Nope, no town funds. The only difference going forward is now you're occupying a space. You have obligations to maintain it and whatnot.
Yeah. But it's not tax exempt, is it?
No.
So there you go.
Oh no, it's a win-win.
That's right.
Win, as I say.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now you were, I got to tell you, you worked for one of my favorite. You were the law clerk to one of my favorite federal judges, Conchalakis.
Yes.
Even though he was a Republican, you'll forgive, right, for that?
Well, he is Republican, but you wouldn't know it.
No, that's true. As a really young cub reporter, he made a ruling on a case, and I needed a comment, and I wanted a comment from him, and he had me in his chambers, and he's in it, and judges are very tough to interview.
Yes.
And he gave me the interview, and because he knew what he could say and he couldn't say, and I was so young, I didn't know what he couldn't say and what
No,
so he said what he.
Well, that's great. Is it on the state? Was he a state judge at the time or federal judge?
Federal.
Yep.
And he just gave me a wonderful interview, and I came back to the station and I said, I got the judge to talk to me, and they go, how the heck did you do that? But he really liked to bring people up, and give them an opportunity.
Well, I was there. I was his first law clerk for 2 years at the federal side, and I've told people, and I still believe this today, it was the highlight of my career. It makes no difference what I do for the rest of my legal career. Just 2 years, the most very charitable, just very, he really wanted to teach the law.
Yeah.
And he just had a second nature about him. It's just uncanny. I mean, just very hardworking, but very passionate about doing the right thing. And I could not have had a better mentor, to start a career.
Yeah.
I still, to this day, I can't believe that I started my career working for
him.
I call him Gus Chalakis, but Con Chalakis.
Yeah. So that was phenomenal. So I'm glad that we have that connection.
Yes.
Here. And Now, what did you do with NASA?
Well, that's after 2 years clerking for Judge Shalakis, I then took a job.
You went to the moon?
Well, at times I felt I did, but no, I went down to Washington, D.C., and I worked for the Department of Justice in the commercial litigation branch. Within that branch, it was a government contract, so I actually defended NASA. Short story.
Yeah,
when the Challenger exploded in 1986, the government, and it was President Reagan, decided basically that that tragedy, was basically going to shut down the ability to launch satellites for quite some time. So the decision was made by what's called the Economic Advisory Council to the President to try to establish a private launch industry so that if we just couldn't continue to use the shuttle exclusively. So what then happened is that a number of people who had very expensive satellites ready to be launched on the shuttle once it resumed were basically told that their contracts were going to be terminated. So they didn't like that because launching on the private industry was going to cost them quite a bit more. So they ended up suing the government, and I forget the number, but it was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think I was in the job for about 6 months, and I was asked to defend the claim. But I still think to this day was the highlight of my career is when I went into the courtroom, and this gets a little bit
mushy.
Yeah. Well, motion for summary judgment is where somebody believes there's no facts in dispute and they're looking to get out of the case. And so they the side, call it the satellite companies, were basically saying that President Reagan had no basis to do this, and that this idea of sovereign immunity or executive privilege didn't apply. And I won't get into all the details of that, but my argument basically was when I got there, you listen to the other guy's argument, and they come in with dozens of lawyers. I'm not kidding, literally dozens of lawyers. I come in myself and one other person. We sit down, and you listen, and these people are very impressive. I mean, very good. Judge, I stand up, very first question, he says, so, Mr. Barber, why can't I basically, tell me why I can't do what the plaintiffs are asking for here? And I said, Judge, all I can think, and I literally thought of it on the spot, Judge, President Reagan could have sat around with the admirals and the generals and everybody else, and they could have said the best way to stop like Soviet missiles from hitting the United States was to launch a yellow school bus. And he can say, that's what they told me, and that's what I did. Same logic here. What basis do you have to second guess what the president did? I mean, there's no basis upon which a federal judge should be sitting to second guess the actions of a president when it comes to national security. Because again, the background for all this was a lot of these satellites were national security satellites. Right. The government wanted to basically not continue to rely upon a shuttle that has proven to be not 100% reliable. So they always, now whether you're right or wrong, I was a Democrat, I was working for, at the time.
President,
yeah, I was there for the experience more than anything else. I was quite shocked. But I have to say the best part about that experience is that's where I met my wife. So,
okay.
So I could never.
But the federal judge then looked at you and
after that again, he said, thank you very much. Didn't get one more question. He granted my motion for summary judgment, and to this day, that was the second highlight of my career.
That's phenomenal. Wow.
Yeah. So I
very short case, very quick,
Well, it took a lot of time. What it really bothered me, and sometimes you get really motivated, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but when somebody moves for summary judgment and they serve it to you, they served it to me on Christmas Eve, and I couldn't believe it. I said, come on.
Yeah.
Hand delivering papers to me at noon, and then have it returnable, meaning you have to have your papers in. I think it was the day after New Year's. And I came home and told my wife, and I said, I am not going to call them for an extension of time. I'm going to get this thing done.
It's going to be a heck of a week. Heck of a holiday week, okay.
Yeah, but she's a lawyer too, so she understood.
I'm sure she did, so that's cool. So, but your bachelor's is in math.
That's
which
correct.
is helpful for your supervisor position, I guess.
It can be, but it's not the same as accounting or anything like that.
Because you know how to add
I can
and subtract.
Yes. Well, actually, it's more important to be able to say no.
So, and then also, I look at the town board. You ran with Rosemary Senti as a team.
Rosemary Senti and Alan Michaels.
Right, and Alan's the one who lost.
Correct.
To whom?
He lost to Lee Carmen.
Lee, okay, so Lee used to be a county legislator?
Correct.
Okay, in fact, I think he was head of the minority party?
That's
okay.
correct, yep.
So,
Yep.
that was the
That was the outcome of that one, yeah.
Okay, 50-50, and then you got who did you run against with?
I ran against Brian Fort.
Who's a Democrat? He was on the show.
He was on the show,
Yeah.
he was a Democrat. He went back to his home in the Republican Party.
Well, but he's a Democrat, and the Democratic Party didn't endorse him?
No, actually, what happened was
Well, he
that
didn't receive the endorsement?
He did not receive the endorsement.
Well, so they didn't endorse him.
Yeah, well, I got endorsed.
Well,
He didn't want to run for town board, so that was basically it. So he switched parties.
so he switched, or did he do a Wilson Pakula?
No, I don't think he did Wilson Pakula
So
for
he switched.
switch parties.
He switched parties in time to run.
I don't know if he had to switch parties. He may have been a Democrat, but he still got the endorsement of the Republicans.
Right, because
Yeah.
they had no one. Isn't that a shame? It just took less than 20 years, and the Republicans couldn't even field a candidate from their own party.
Well, I would argue that he was a member of the party. He just was a Democrat for a few years.
Dino.
I don't disagree with people if they want to switch, but to switch, then switch back.
Yeah, no.
Would seem a bit, and
disingenuous.
I made a point of that.
Yeah.
I did think it's, you do have a commitment. Party means something. That's.
But I'd say this to all local government officials. There's no Democrat or Republican way to plow roads and to pave roads.
Oh, that's definitely true.
So regardless on the local level, it doesn't really matter what your party affiliation is.
I think it does. I mean,
the supervisor in New Scotland is an independent. Doug.
LaGrange.
LaGrange, yeah.
Independence Party.
Oh, is he
He's not
independent?
independent.
Oh, okay.
No, he belongs to a party.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And,
So.
but that's still, okay, but within 20 years, in less than 20 years, the Republican Party couldn't even find someone. You might say that he used to be, and he was, and he did this and that, but they didn't have a rib rock Republican that they could put up to run. That's shocking.
I think that's probably true. That's what certainly seems to have happened, but I don't really know who applied. I don't know what was
I know you don't know the ins and outs of this.
Yeah, I try not to find out what's happening on the other side.
Other side of the aisle, but, it's just...
No, you are correct. It goes to show how much the town has changed. The town has become a Democratic town by enrollment. It's a lot of people switch their enrollments, and a lot of it goes back really to 1980s, 84, that
There
time
used to be a waiting list to be a committeeman for a Republican slot in the town of Guilderland.
Right.
And now they can't even get all their committee slots filled.
There are times when I wonder if they even have enough committee people to constitute a party in the town of Guilderland. That actually, no, you're right. It is shocking, but also too, I think what happens too is that, committee positions, there's a lot of work you have to do. People really just don't really find the time to be involved in politics.
Yeah, but all the committee slots for the Democratic Party in the town are filled.
For the most part.
For the most part.
That's true. But that's also for, we have a very determined party leader in Dave Bosworth. He's been there for quite some time. He's got a lot of I think it ebbs and flows. There's no doubt about it. I think the Republican Party could bounce back and be reconstituted, but it really takes a concerted effort. But also, I do think that the reason why the Democrats at least have been successful in the town is that it's been responsive to the needs, of the community.
And I talked to you about this because you're a lifelong Guilderland resident.
That's true.
You graduated Guilderland High School, you went to the Guilderland Public Schools.
In Washington for a while, but that's true.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that this is your base.
Oh yeah, when I was a youngster, when I was a teenager, I was a Democrat. I couldn't work at the town park. I couldn't do really anything. I couldn't get any summer jobs because I wasn't a Republican.
Who was the supervisor? Do you remember then?
Oh boy, it goes through so many. There's Carl Walters, Kevin Moss.
Kevin Moss.
Yeah, there's a number of people. That,
he was a long time.
Yep.
Yeah, he was there a long time.
Yeah. Well, I won't be there that long.
You're sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
Okay.
that's not something I want to do.
You're going to
first.
term limit yourself?
I'm going to basically take each term as it comes, but I think Kevin Moss and some of these people are there for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And no, I don't
I mean,
plan
you're
to be
young.
there.
You're 55. I'm 55, so I
Well,
can say you're young.
Well, how about this? We'll check back in 20 years and we'll see.
Okay. You got a date. Okay. Now, there was an article in the Altamont Enterprise about the day the ballet died.
Oh, okay.
Now, what? I didn't even know there was a Guilderland ballet.
Well, I can tell you about the Guilderland Ballet.
Please do.
Okay, all right.
I knew you'd be the perfect
All
person.
right. Well, my daughter danced ballet, so I know something about it. So I know from the viewpoint of a parent, probably I'm going to say the lesser important parent, but the Guilderland Ballet basically was operated out of what's called the ballet barn, which is a building that the town took title to back sometime in the 1980s, and the DeRook family. Frances DeRook, Dr. DeRook, I should say, Dr. Jane DeRook, and her family and daughters were very actively involved, and they really were the ballet program. So they ran a very successful program for a number of years, maybe 20 years, and then it kind of just slowed down and
You see, she started that, if she ran it for 20 years, she was 90, she's 90 now.
Right.
So that she started that when she was 70.
And you had no doubt when you walked in the building who the boss was. I mean, she
And
was
you see,
very particular.
so you
about
could
that.
be in this job for 20
That's
years.
true.
So,
I
you
just have
know.
to become a ballet director. You're right.
People start
my
careers
career
at
change.
70. You know? But were you saddened that this...
I'm very sad, but also too, I think what happened is that people's interests change, and I think it's even in the article. I think there was some discussion about kids want to play soccer, they want to do other things, and we're taking that space and we're turning it more into a fine art. So we're hoping to get ballet. We already have different types of dances, ballroom dancing and whatnot. We have, we got part of the problem you have, and I know it's not nearly the same as your prior guest with the city of Albany, is that there are some buildings that really just sat idle for a while.
Right.
They weren't kept up, and now I'm trying to revive them a
So
little bit.
the Tower Center Park, you still have plays going on there? Or
We have the
musician-
Performing Arts Center. It's free concerts every Thursday night.
during the summer, yeah.
During the summer, so it's and we have a very large open space.
And on, I guess, Fuller Road, I guess there's 9 acres that, by you Albany, that is looking to be developed or something, or they renamed one of the streets?
Oh, the Laughlin Street,
Yeah.
the Sandage Street.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's sort of like on the city of Albany border, it's the Guilderland border, it's McCownville. What's going on with that?
Okay, well, it's the project itself is entirely within the city of Albany, but is immediately adjacent to the town of Guilderland. So
But you have to be concerned because of water lines, I guess, maybe, and...
No, not the water lines.
No?
It's really more is the traffic,
Traffic?
on the Fuller Road.
Okay. So there is overlap.
Yeah.
You can't
No,
just
no,
be
no, we raised some
separate.
concerns. So there's at least 2, if not 3, Jewish cemeteries on both
Right,
sides
yeah.
of the road.
Independent Benevolent, Beth Abraham Jacob, and
they're on
the Hebrew Taylors.
Right,
I
on the
think,
other
yeah.
side. Right, so there are a lot of entities that were concerned. By the way, the cemeteries, I think, are all within the city
Yes, they are. Yes.
of Albany. Now, our concern is, and this is an issue you often have, is it's not a question not in my backyard. This is literally the core residential part of the town of Guilderland, the historical part, and it is full of very modest homes, but homes that people have been trying for 20, 30 years to protect, whether it be through the Northway Thruway being built, other, it's under a lot of stress. And I think this is a radical rezone from basically bulldozing 11 homes in the city of Albany for the purposes of building what I view as being high-priced, apartments. That may be good for the city, may or may not be good for the city. It's a whole other question. But for the town of Guilderland, all it does basically is it changes the character, of the neighborhood that's not more than 200 feet away. So what's happened is that the Albany County Planning Board, which has a
Albany City Planning.
no, Albany
County Planning
Albany
Board?
County.
Okay.
Anytime you have
Okay.
a land use question that's on a
Impacts,
municipal boundary,
yeah.
they look at it, and they looked at it, and they basically said they disapproved. They said the road is constructed because of the cemeteries. You're not going to take any cemetery land to widen Fuller Road. You know, the traffic issues have not been adequately addressed. Stormwater is abysmal out there.
Right.
The density is terrible. I mean, there's lots of reasons to be against it, and really there's no reason to be for it. There is adequate space in the city, you know, to build high-priced homes, if that's what you really wanted to do. Yeah, the bottom line is that McCownville Improvement Association historically included not only McCownville, but also to the east down into the city of Albany, you know, and to the north and Fuller Road. So this was always considered to be kind of, yes, there's a municipal boundary, but you looked at the area as a whole as being.
Well, that's why I started off by saying there is still impact, even though the boundary is on, you know, the building is on the, like you said, 20 feet or 200 feet on the other side.
Clearly.
So there's always, that's why I brought it up to you, not to have you comment on a City of Albany project.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no, clearly going to have substantial negative impacts. There's nothing positive that comes out of it.
Is this on the east side or the west side of Fuller Road?
It's on the north side.
No, west side.
Oh, west side, but north, I'm sorry.
Near SUNY Poly.
It's north of Shabbos House.
Yeah, that's why, because I know the Shabbos House where.
Do you know Shabbos House and the Rubens?
I granted the approval.
When? Oh, when you were on?
Chairman of the zoning board.
When you were chairman of the zoning board.
I took a leave of absence and I came back. I was there in the Shabbos House application. I think it just arrived. I then left to do something else, and I came back 6 months later, and the Shabbos House application was still there. And then the very first thing I said, why is this application still pending? I know there's some issues about stormwater.
Yes, yeah.
And it was approved. I know the neighborhood association was not happy, but it was the right thing to do.
Okay, well, that's good.
Good job, then.
I'm glad you did.
Well, I should say one thing too, and I have to say, and I think to this day people will recognize is that the Shabbos House is part of their stormwater management. This gets really boring very quickly, but they put in a basically on-site, very large tank in the back of their property. And a lot of the water that otherwise would continue flowing down into the residential properties is captured by the stormwater management.
We call
the
it the
Shabbos
pit.
House.
We call it the pit.
Well, whatever you want to call it, I think it's played a very positive role.
Yes.
And I also can say that I think the community is very happy and very welcoming. So I think it's been a very positive experience.
Okay.
Which I always thought it would be.
Excellent.
Did you want to tell us something that we didn't know enough to ask you about that you want to bring up?
A couple very minor things. I mean, from probably more Guilderland oriented than we are taking a concerted effort to increase, I think at very low cost, people's access to open space. And sometimes open space is sort of like where nothing's developed and you drive by and you see a nice view. What we want to do is start linking our open space so that people can get from a residential community to the library by walking, not having to get on Route 20. You get to the YMCA. I mean, you think it's easy to do, but you start planning out the routes. No,
the trails are not very easy to plan.
And trying to tap into the Pine Bush, which is a good part of it's in the town of Guilderland. You know, we're rich in a lot of these natural resources, and the town has been fairly aggressive in securing open space, particularly ones that protect, you know, environmental and historical. We have a couple locations in our town that have evidence of presence of Indians or colonial, you know, so we really want to protect that. Yeah, it's very underappreciated, I think, more than anything else.
Well, you know how you can tell the four towers that's the Uptown SUNY campus?
Indian?
Is that, well, first came the Indians, then came the colonies, then came the states. Then came,
Dutch.
First came the Indians, then came the Dutch, then came the colonies, then came the states.
Really, that's how they did it?
You know, and
that's exactly it.
And if you could figure out the first...
I'd forgotten that, but you're right.
But if you can figure out the first part, where Indian quad is, then you can go around. And somehow, being that the Carillon is off-center, that you can figure out where the quad is that you're looking
inside information you have there.
Well, I'm glad, so, you know, that
so am I, but I didn't know that.
Learned, you know, for survival purposes, if nothing else. So are you living the dream now that you're...
I have to say that I like the job because it's fun. It's fun because anybody who calls, anybody comes in the door or whatnot, if I can't answer the question and help them out, I know there's people in town hall who can. So it's just nice to know that people's problems can be solved. And honestly, I can say for the most part, we're doing a pretty good job.
So you're more of a people person, you think?
I tend to be.
Would your children say that about you?
Yeah, I think they
Okay.
would. Yeah. You know,
Well, I think you have to be a people person to be in
You
this.
do.
You can't be a curmudgeon.
I'm a non-politician politician. If somebody asked me, you know, in 2016 I would be the town supervisor, I would say never, never, never.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but that was, you know, things change in your life, and my kids graduated and have jobs, and you know, my wife and I can look at different options.
But you know, it's interesting that you weren't bitter when you couldn't get a job under the Moss administration, and you said, oh, I'm going to have that guy's job someday.
You know, but the thing about that is that it forced me to do other things. Instead of being, you know, working at a park or something like that, or I worked in a liquor store. Now, it may seem kind of funny, but I met a lot of fascinating people, you know, and it was...
Hopefully it was a
good
Guilderland good liquor store.
Actually, it was a liquor store, doesn't exist, called
Oh,
Loudon
okay.
Liquors, opposite Memorial Hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
It's a
yeah.
nice place to make deliveries to in Loudonville.
We're out of
Give
time.
good tips.
We're out of time. You're doing a great job, and we'll get another report card another year to see how Guilderland's doing. But in the meantime, have a good success with good health.
Yes.
Thank you so
Continued
much.
success.
Thank
absolutely.
you.